There are some programs that are in a variety of degrees of being screwed up right now. And that's why this time of year, coaching searches happen, or you have rumors of coaching searches. Now, some weeks we have more news to talk about than others here. A lot of times it's not news. A lot of times there is nothing new to quote unquote report. And if it was, this is not the place that we report, but we do talk about it. But I just want to go around the table here. And some places, not much has changed since you and I talked Tuesday night. But I wanted to start at Texas, and I'm going to go around the room here and we'll just talk about what the latest is we've heard and what could be coming this weekend on these matters. Tom Herman at Texas. They had the game against Kansas that was scheduled for Saturday. It's canceled. It's not postponed, it's just canceled. The Longhorn season is over. They may not even go to a bowl game. It's going to be a choice thing, but they may not go to a bowl game. You may have seen the last game for Texas in 2020. So what now? Are the decision makers, here's what I'd love to know, are the decision makers at Texas waffling as much as some of the Texas folks I talked to? And you know who you are. I'm not calling you out by name. There's several of you who were off the Tom Herman train prior to Kansas State and then hopped right back on. Well, obviously you can't afford to be doing that if you're a decision maker. So I'm just curious, is this a game-by-game thing? I've never believed in that. I'm about to talk about it with Malzahn at Auburn too. I don't believe in that. Here's what I do believe. What I do believe is they're not going to get Urban Meyer in all likelihood. I suppose never say never. I heard his comments today, I think it was, on Cowherd's show. He doesn't sound like he's done coaching to me, but then again, when he talked to me for 25 minutes and we put it on YouTube back in the spring, I told you then, I don't think he's done coaching. So it's never sounded to me like he's done. Doesn't really matter a whole lot for Texas if they can't get him, though. They hope he is done if they can't get him. But the question is, has been and continues to be, is there a list below Urban Meyer you're willing to part ways with Tom Herman for? We are beating the drum and kind of beating a dead horse at this point, asking that. So I'm going to kind of move pretty quickly through this. But if there's not, if it was Urban Meyer or another year of Tom Herman, boy, oh boy, there was no keeping the toothpaste in the tube. If you're targeting Urban Meyer, it takes too much of a collective force. It takes too many people to be on board to keep their mouth shut. So you were going to find out. So we found out they went after Urban Meyer. If they swung and missed, you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. Everybody knows it. Not only does Tom Herman know it, his entire staff knows it, his entire roster knows it, all the personnel folks in the four walls down there know it, and every major recruit knows it. How do you operate? With both your legs cut out from under you. They were already having a hard enough time, in case you haven't noticed. How do they operate now? Can you imagine that entire environment next year if he is indeed brought back? The toothpaste in the tube, boy, it's one of the most powerful metaphors out there because you ever tried to do it? Put it back in there? It's easy to squeeze out. It's easy to go after Urban Meyer. But if he tells you no, ooh, you're going to have to borrow your buddy's toothpaste because you're not brushing your teeth with all this stuff all over the place here. How about Gus Malzahn and Auburn? We're going to predict their game in just a few minutes. But Gus Malzahn and Auburn, there have been a lot of rumors that things have been decided there. Sunday morning, you will see a press release out of Auburn. Gus Malzahn's been fired. The best I can tell down there, and I grew up close to Auburn, know quite a few people around the program, I don't believe that to be true. When I say that, I just don't believe any decision's been made there. I don't believe one way or the other they have come down and gavel has hit table and it's just a formality at this point. I don't believe that. It could very well happen. I don't believe they've arrived at that decision, which means if I'm right about that, and if the people who I've talked to are right, then it technically means minds could still be swayed. If there are people on the fence, if the decision itself is riding on the fence, well, by the very nature of riding a fence, you could still fall either way. Which leads me to wonder, as ridiculous as it would be, 8 years into someone's tenure, could 4 quarters of football this Saturday against Mississippi State seriously be what a lot of people are waiting to see? Again, I view that wholeheartedly as ridiculous. 4 years in, that's ridiculous, much less 8 years. You either know or you don't know. Nothing they do is a 6.5-point favorite on the road at Starkville, Mississippi at the end of the year in a throwaway game by a lot of metrics is going to tell you anything you don't already know. But nevertheless, crazier things have happened. So here's the other interesting question I had posed to me by someone who was speculating. They were throwing a couple names at me. If there was an Auburn head coaching opening, which I won't throw out here now. It would be fun, but I'm not going to do that. But what they ask me, sort of rhetorically, is think to yourself, could there be a candidate out there that's not on the public radar that Auburn already has a pretty good idea they could get if they went after. That would be a solid upgrade for Malzahn, so he checks all the boxes. We're going to pay that buyout money. We want a solid upgrade. What if they know of a name out there through back channels that they could get a yes from that maybe isn't on anyone's radar? That stuff happens. It absolutely happens. When you got money to throw around especially, that does happen. And I don't think finance is the biggest issue. And in fact, I don't think finances are an obstacle standing between Auburn and making this decision at all. But I will just sort of reiterate some things that I know the folks over on our auburnundercover.com board have reported, and I hear the same stuff from down there when I talk to people. This staff's not been a good staff. The chemistry, it's not really been much of any this year. It's not the most closely knit coaching staff in the SEC. Sometimes you get that. Alabama had that a few years ago. Sometimes that just happens. Here's the problem. Unlike Alabama, where Nick Saban has his pick of pretty much anyone he wants, Malzahn, sometimes people don't realize this. Look at his trajectory as a coach. He really hasn't been many places. And what happens when you haven't been many places is you don't really have an extensive network. Like, how many coaches does Gus Malzahn really know, first off? And I mean know intimately. And secondly, he, even if he's back next year, is understood universally to be skating on thin ice with hot blades. So then you got to ask yourself, who wants to volunteer for that? And keep in mind, if we're going to make staff changes at Auburn, if Malzahn stays, but we're going to make staff changes, you also got to understand this. We're looking to hit home runs with those hires. I mean, if Kevin Steele were to move on, we're looking to bring in the next Kevin Steele. You're going to have to massively overpay relative to market value if you are going to land some big names. Because people want stability. They want financial stability, but they just want professional stability. No one wants to go to a place where they know they may be back in the unemployment line in 12 months, buyout or no buyout. No one wants to sign up for that, or at least very few people do. And the other thing to note, it's been kind of thrown around this week. A lot of you have observed this, and I was kind of thinking along the lines with you. There's been no public support. There has been no statement from any athletic director, Green down there. There's been no board of trustee members talking. The president down there hasn't said a word. Not that they owe it to anyone to do that, but normally, this kind of stuff can tend to erode at recruiting that's already nothing to write home about for Auburn this year. So normally you want to quiet that if it's false, and there has been none of that. So if Malzahn is to be let go after his game Saturday, which I have no knowledge of, but if he is to be let go, you'll probably look back and say, oh, the tea leaves were all over the place. Why didn't you notice them? And the other one I want to talk about tonight, just a second here, is one we haven't really touched on all that much, and that's Justin Fuente at Virginia Tech. They got a big game. We're going to talk about it in a second, too. They got a big game against Virginia Saturday. It's the rivalry game, obviously. It is pretty widely accepted within the industry that Justin Fuente's out after this year. And Virginia Tech is pretty widely to be considered one of the more underrated jobs in the sport right now. Good conference, stable infrastructure there. It's a very opportune spot if you're a good recruiter to put together a really good product. The game day environment there is phenomenal. The fan base is very passionate. You get good support. And so maybe you just don't have the coach right now. So it is pretty widely to almost universally thought he's out. I'll tell you what's funny is I was scanning some of our boards today. I went over to our Virginia Tech board. As much as they want Gus gone on the Auburn board, someone floated Gus Malzahn on the Virginia Tech board. As far as Virginia Tech is concerned, Malzahn's already been fired at LSU. He is now on the market, and we are openly speculating, despite the fact that we don't have a coaching opening at Virginia Tech right now, whether we hypothetically want Gus Malzahn at Virginia Tech. And the answer was yes, overwhelmingly. Just something to keep in mind. If you're down there in Lee County near Auburn watching this, there are fan bases out there that would love for you to toss Gus on the scrap heap. So maybe he won't be unemployed for long. We'll see. As for Michigan and Jim Harbaugh, I was going to talk about him tonight. There's nothing new to talk about. It's the same old, same old. Let's wait until the end of the season, which is now. And then we may be waiting more for definitive conclusions on the NFL side of things, for people to know if they're going to make a move on the NFL side of things. And therefore, Jim Harbaugh then knows if he's going to make a move. But then again, as we documented the other night, then maybe it's a moot point. Maybe he plans on staying and just restructuring that deal. I think this weekend will tell the tale, obviously, on a whole lot of this stuff.